Yeah, thank you very much. The question that our study intends to address or addressed is, can the cultural techno contextual approach, acronym that CTCA, dissolve the barriers of African students to learning difficult concepts in biology? I'm leading a team of researchers. You can see the others here: Franklin Onowubeda, Oluseyi Ajayi, Tokunbo Dekeye, Deborah Gbanimu, and Esther Peter. Yesterday, we listened to uh, an outstanding keynote address, which underlined the importance of reimagining science education. Our research that we're reporting is pitched on this theme of reimagining science education, of course, within the broad theme of the 94th conference. The context is Africa, a very beautiful continent, which we invite you all to come and visit. We're very hospitable people. And the local context, by way of the country, is Nigeria. And we are located, that's this institute where the researchers are located in Lagos. Lagos is the commercial capital of Nigeria. The political capital is in Abuja. This country is home to over 200 million people, the most populous country in the continent. And our center is a center of excellence funded by the World Bank and is the Africa Center of Excellence for Innovative and Transformative STEM Education. The thrust of the work of this great center is to promote excellence in the teaching and learning of STEM through, the adjective is important, culturally relevant. So our center gravitates its activities around culturally relevant matters, research in producing master STEM teachers. The problem that this particular study sought to solve is, see, over the years, we found that African students are not doing as well in STEM, especially in biology. And it's exemplified by scores in school and public examinations. At the international level, when you compare African students with others in the other regions of the world, you find that the results are not as encouraging, but it could be better. Now, these matters pose some challenge for the vision of Africa by the African Union, that by 2063, the Africa we want will be like the land flowing with milk and honey. But you see, for the land to flow with milk and honey, it has to be pillared on science and technology education. So that's the big problem. And I tell you, African countries have not been resting on their oars. Efforts have been made over the years. We have curriculum reform efforts. We have improved resourcing of our schools, albeit not as speedy as we want. And we have explored several methods of delivering the curriculum: cooperative learning, V-diagramming, and the rest. But we are still struggling to improve on performance. So our center was charged by the World Bank, to see what other methods that we can that can be deployed to improve science teaching and learning in Africa. Oh, there comes Mr. Culture knocking at our door, knocking at the door of methods of teaching science. And Mr. Culture is telling us that, look, if we do not factor the cultural context into the learning framework, then we are not going to move as fast as we want in terms of improving the delivery, quality of delivery of STEM education. So that led us to put together an approach, which is the cultural techno-contextual approach, CTCA. Is the newest kid on the block. Look, there are several tools available to the science teacher in Africa, several tools for teaching and learning STEM. But CTCA has come on the scene. Culture, as we are aware, is everything about the human species. Culture is everything. It's about the dress, It's about religion, arts and culture, and arts and literature, and all of this. So we thought that if we want to attack the problem of underperformance in science, we have to look for those areas in science, in STEM, where the students are underperforming in, and our subject for this particular study is biology. So we had a two-pronged approach. First is we conducted a survey to find out the topics that students find difficult to learn in biology. And then after identifying that topic, we went for the jugular, using this CTCA to find out if it will work in improving achievement. So this led us to two research questions. The first is about the topics that we find difficult, and the second is, if we use CTCA, will there be a statistically significant difference if we did not in the achievement of students in biology in that perceived difficult topic? So the first research question, in addressing it, I said a survey. We survey students from Nigeria and Ghana, and that's our N1493 of senior secondary students. Senior secondary, we equate in the US system to be grades 10, 11, and 12. So the data that we collected showed that variation and evolution turned out to be the most perceived difficult by the students, followed by genetics and the rest that you can see on the screen. So now that we have got over phase one, which is to detect, to find out the topic that they find difficult, we then took on the second phase of the experiment, of the study, which is a quasi-experimental phase. So this went on where the traditional one, where you had the experimental group, and then you have the control group. You can see the sample sizes. N is 33 for the experimental, 38 for the control. And we collected achievement data using a validated with a high reliability value of for this instrument. So both groups, experimental and control, were pre-tested using VAT, the achievement test. And then they were treated. Well, the treatment in this case will mean the experimental group being CTCA, and the control group taught by the regular teacher, the way he or she will teach the topic, variation and evolution. And both groups were post-tested the same instrument. The question that I'm sure you would like to know or ask is, how does CTCA work? CTCA is very elegant. The algorithm is quite simple. Teachers that benefited from training in the use of CTCA, I find it would be quite simple to use. And it proceeds like this. The first thing that is done is before the lesson, say 2 days to the lesson, we want to teach variation and evolution. The students are asked, okay, my dear students, in 2 days' time or next week, we're going to have evolution and variation. We want you to go back home, talk with your parents, talk with your uncles and everybody around, and then find out what are the cultural practices or cultural elements relating to variation. Like in the case of this particular study, they looked at biochemical mutants, which like albinos in the families, and some people had some issues relating to some genetically inherited disease and all that in their families, and issues related to the culture that describe such phenomena. So before the students come to class, they will have had discussions on the cultural practices and get examples, and also use their internet-enabled devices to search the web. Do a YouTube search, Google search for such web resources. So when they get back to class, when they come to class for the lesson itself, what the teacher does is to get the students in groups, mixed ability, mixed groups, and ask them, oh, wow, you've learned these things at home. Probably some did, some did not. But work in these groups and share your experiences, the cultural elements, cultural practices that you were able to glean from your parents and the other significant others, and then the resources from the from the internet. So a group leader will come and share I would find this particular part of this thing to be quite exciting, for the students. So each group leader will report, and then step 2 is step 3 will be the teacher will now take on the lesson. We'll progress the lesson for where the students stopped, using examples from what is submitted, and then we'll use humor, because we like humor. We're humorous people in Africa. Use humor and draw practical examples from the immediate surrounding of the school. That's the context part of this. So there's no point in the teacher drawing examples from somewhere 200 kilometers away, whereas right around the school, you're talking about variation. Even within the class, you can see that, oh, this student is lighter skinned than the other, the nose, variation, ears, variation, outside the school, right across in the schoolyard, you find plants, different leaf shapes and all that. So contextually related. So the lesson progresses also step 4. By step 5, that is when the teacher will say, okay, class is over for now. He will compose a summary of the lesson. He or she, the teacher will compose a summary of the lesson and then share through WhatsApp or SMS with the students, because they love this, very much. But that's only the first lesson. Subsequent lessons, the teacher now appoints some class representative to do that. That's CTCA in action in the classroom. In the laboratory, the same kind of step with some modification. In the field, doing field studies, CTCA with some modification. Now, this is one of the teachers in step 3. The students are finished giving their examples, and he's progressing the lesson. This is another one, and this is one that's happening in the lab. So what did we find? Now, we ensure that there's homogeneity. We tested, not assured, it tested for the homogeneity with the variances of the control group scores, the experimental group scores, using the Shapiro-Wilk test, and we were quite satisfied with the results that met the assumption of homogeneity of variance. Because we couldn't assign students to experimental and control classes, so analysis of covariance was predisposing to a further analysis. And what we found is that the experimental group scored, higher than the control, and you find it to be outperformed the control on the measure of achievement. Now, these results concur with some others like Adam and the rest that you can see on the screen. Now, in explaining these results, we want to see what gives CTCA the kick. What's the mechanism of action? You can see that culture. You see, nobody comes into this world without some cultural environment, in the cultural milieu. And there's no topic. We found that there's no topic in the science syllabus, in the science curriculum, that you cannot relate to the culture of the people. So by the time you relate to the culture, now a barrier is jumped by the student. So with these 3 frameworks, culture, technology, which is pervasive, and then the context of the school, is like a triple barrel. So that's a qualitative study, qualitative component of several of our studies confirm that students say that, oh, with all of these things in this barrel, there's no escape for difficult concepts. The Vygotsky's theory of social constructivism also plays a role in giving us a foothold in the move towards breaking those barriers. And before the class starts, you have advanced organizers, and there's Okebukola's the techno-cultural theory. All of these things, play roles in the feature of CTCA doing quite well. What are the next steps? Well, the next steps include fine-tuning the CTCA mobile app. We have developed a very wonderful, I'm not making a boast here, the CTCA app is available. We are fine-tuning it. We are putting all manner of cultural elements. We are putting in several tools for the teacher using CTCA. And we're further testing the efficacy of CTCA in other topics in biology. As I speak, many students from different parts of Africa are picking topics. Many researchers are picking topics in biology, and also in using CTCA for other STEM subjects. We have them in chemistry, in ICT, in physics. In fact, at this NARST meeting, quite a number of our researchers are presenting presenting their findings in other subjects on CTCA. We anticipate, ladies and gentlemen, that by the 2022 NARST conference, we'll be able to update you. We anticipate that we'll have updates that we'll share with the NARST members. And the question that I want to close with, is CTC a good vaccine against difficult concepts in science? Well, it's difficult to say because field trials are still ongoing, but the results are very promising. I'd like to thank you all for listening. I'd like to thank Professor Mary Atwater for attending this session. She's been a wonderful leader in STEM education globally. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. We'll now take any questions you have.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So it's really interesting that you are connecting science and especially difficult concepts of in science with culture. I'm wondering whether this might be problematic in some context. I'm not sure about your context. For example, evolution. So, in many countries, evolution is not considered as credible in societies, in many cultures, in Bangladesh or even in Nigeria, I don't know. So how will you mitigate this tension? So this might be a challenge. I'm not sure whether you are experiencing this in your context.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's the beauty of it. You see, there are some cultural elements, cultural practices that run ad contra to scientific principles. So they're like in two worlds. No, I give you an example. We're talking about variation. Albinos are biochemical mutants, but the cultural in this study, some students came back to class to say that, well, there's variation, but the matter of albino is caused by some grandparent not being too happy with you and causing you to have an albino. So it's important. It gives the science teacher a vantage opportunity to demystify that, to misconception. You see, it's so nice. That's one beauty of this CTCA. It brings out those enabling cultural practices for learning science, and those practices that disable, we have to now separate them. Look, many of the students came and said, look, they are creationists. Evolution, that's not part of it, not part of it for us. So, but the science program will not, when they ask you a question, what are the stages in evolution? You cannot in the exam say it is creation. So there are two worlds, and we then use the opportunity of CTC to educate them that this is a world of science, the world of religion. As I said, I showed the interrelationship. Culture is broad. The dress, the dance, everything, religion. So CTCA affords us an opportunity to draw the best of all the worlds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Mary Atwater.
Mary, you are still muted. You have to unmute.
There it is. I apologize.
Okay.
I have a very different question. And that is that basically, Peter, you look at pre and post as far as your findings are concerned. You had a very small group, but did you look at differences between males and females? And you had students coming from 2 different countries. And from what I understand about African countries, within those countries, there are different ethnic groups. So did you look at differences among the various ethnic groups to determine about whether there were true differences? Because when you lump people all together, you might find differences, but when you start separating, those differences may vanish.
Wonderful question, Mary. You see, what we reported here is for a subset of the big sample. It's only for the Nigerian group. It's only for the group in Lagos. Now, several of our students from all over Africa are conducting a lot of studies all over the place. And the variables you just listed, Mary, are those that we are pursuing. We would like to thank you for the ideas, and I would like to let you say this. Let my just a minute. Yeah, this. If you look at the third slide, we're aggregating the findings of studies conducted on other STEM subjects and, of course, on other variables, including the variables you just mentioned. I agree with you. In Nigeria, for instance, we have several ethnic groups with about 250 different languages. So they may differ. So we are going to use a thread to pull all of these things together at the end of the day. And before I end, I would like to congratulate you, Mary, on the book that is coming out that is going to shake the world of multiculturalism, or if you like, let me use the American pronunciation, multiculturalism. It's a wonderful encyclopedia, and we're looking forward to it coming out. Thank you, Mary.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have time for now. Next up, we have Anina Mahmoud.